High Performance Training and Rehabilitation Manager. Let me invite CEO for welcome address.
The meeting which has been, the press briefing which has been scheduled in order to enlighten you all of what Sri Lanka Cricket has been initiating for the last couple of months. This was initiated by the President based on the recommendations done by certain athletes in order to provide the assistance which is required for the cricketers. And I also would like at this moment to take this opportunity to welcome Sprenger, who is the podiatrist. This is something new to our system. I'm sure most of you all wouldn't have even heard about it for the last couple of years, or maybe for the rest of your life. This is something which we had it about 10 years ago. About 10 years ago, the last time I could recall. We got down a podiatrist who provided the requirements for the athletes in order for them to perform better and to also prevent the injuries. So Nick came about 1 month ago to Sri Lanka, especially just before the team departed for the Champions Trophy, and he took the measurements of the players, and he's a guy who is competent, he's a doctor by profession, and he went back, he made the stuff and brought it back to Sri Lanka. So he's going to be here for the next couple of days, and he would be working with 30 to 35 players who have been contracted by Sri Lanka Cricket, and the total cost of this project was taken care by Sri Lanka Cricket, which is going to be very costly, and this is in order to avoid and to prevent injuries which will occur the players. I don't intend to talk for long. I will also give the opportunity to the others of my colleagues who is at the head table in order to enlighten you all, especially Dr. Nick Sprenger, who will explain it to you all what it's all about, so that you will get an idea.
Out there on the field, with the help of Dr. Nicholas Sprenger, former Olympic medalist and Australian podiatrist, Sri Lanka Cricket launched
12 or 13 months ago. We've looked at a variety of ways of improving performance of our players across the board. We've looked at fitness levels, which I know has been a topic on everyone's agenda recently. But we've looked at other areas where we might be able to just make a difference to our players. Ultimately, we want our players playing at their best more of the time. And from my experience in England and the Marlins in Australia, this was an area we felt that could help our players stay on the park more of the time. We have had a history of hamstring injuries. This doesn't guarantee that we won't have any more in the future, but we're hoping that this certainly will help have less problems with our players, but also enhancing their performance on the field. So from my point of view, anything we can add an advantage to our players when they walk onto the park can only be a good thing. So from my point of view, this has been a really good investment by Sri Lankan Cricket, and we're looking forward to having a long relationship with Dr. Sprenger going forward. So thank you for your efforts, Doctor. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, Mr. Simon Willis. Let's invite
opportunity, and I think one into the future that I would like to cultivate and really grow, with the importance of podiatry being a foot and ankle, and we'll talk about this shortly, involvement in the care of players, but also too working with the other support staff that make up this team, because one of the things with podiatry is that we're a small part of the body, but in saying that, it does have quite significant effects on the body, which we'll talk about shortly. But certainly with the time that I've spent thus far, we've got some good information. We've got some also two very good screening, which is also helping us to develop protocols, platforms, and a lot of different ways that we can make the players that we have better. Also to injury as part of the game. We'd be very naive to think that we can't, stop injuries. But what we can certainly do is try to minimise that, shorten the rehabilitation times. And at the end of the day, if that improves the players on the pitch, then we're all happy to be a part of that. Certainly, as you look up on the screen here at the moment, podiatry is a branch of medicine devoted to the diagnosis, but also to management and treatment of lower limb disorders, particularly of the foot and ankle primarily. But as you can see up there, that foot and ankle leads to the leg, and of course that leads to your thigh and up to your hips. So at the end of the day, you've got to realise that if your foot's not working that well, it can have a lot of effects. And there has been some information regarding hamstrings, also to lower back injuries, and this may be something that might help a lot of the players certainly moving forward in that area as well. Just to put another slide up there if we can with the anatomy. If we have a look at that slide there, that's an x-ray of your foot. It's fairly complicated if you have a look at that. There's 26 bones in there. Yet, if you think about 26 bones and you've got to stand on that, and they've all got to work just like a watch, if it doesn't work well, your watch doesn't work, does it? In this case up here, there's 26 bones and over 100 plus ligaments, so it's a fairly important structure, okay? Usually, like anything, I guess, in sports medicine, we want to know how can we help? And as you can appreciate, if you look up there, identifying injury causes is a big thing. Okay, a lot of the screening that we've done, we've taken that information, and certainly down the bottom there you can see that shoes, you don't just put a pair of shoes on and expect it to do everything. Okay, there's so many shoes available on the market, so from my end it's helping the players make the right choices. That's number one. Orthotics are a big thing. Okay, if that foot doesn't function well, this is a way of working that in. Okay, like braces on your teeth. Okay, straightens your teeth in an insert. When you wear it, it helps you balance better, it helps you run better. It helps a lot of different things, okay? But certainly with us and moving forward with Sri Lankan cricket, it's trying to change some of the behaviours of players with their feet that don't act very well, okay? As you can appreciate that slide up there, your feet are at the bottom of that, okay? So when it comes to like building a house, you wouldn't build your house on sand. You wouldn't build it on a marshland. Same with our feet. If we have feet that are not strong, let's make them stronger. But the big thing to take away with podiatry is that with your shoes and your inserts, they can have a pretty significant role on how your body can behave. Particularly if anyone in this room's had foot pain before. If you can imagine the players, if they've got foot pain, they've got to think about the next ball, they've got to think about the next action they've got to bowl. Okay? It does take away, particularly mentally, from their focus. So with us trying to help their behaviour of their feet, not only helps your feet, but also other things in focus as well. So certainly, with regards to podiatry, it is concerning the nature of the feet, but at the same time it has a lot of flow-on effects to a lot of other areas. Okay, so hopefully the next area that we look at with podiatry is growing this area with Sri Lankan cricket and certainly improving the players' abilities, and then ultimately, certainly, moving forward with Sri Lankan cricket, making it a better team, number one team.
Thank you, Doctor. And we'll now open for the question and answer from the media. Please raise your hands if you have any questions.
Yeah. In 2000 or 2002 or whatever, at that time he has provided this facility to the players. So he had this in mind and he consulted some of the senior players in the cricketing circle, and some of them have been doing at their own cost. And he felt that it is the way forward in order for us to prevent the injuries for the players. And he suggested that we will provide this to all the contracted players, in addition to the players who have also toured with the national team, which could be used maybe for about a year or two the first time. Then after that they will have to kind of invest on it. So this was initiated by him, and he consulted some of the senior players, and based on their recommendations we moved forward with them.
So this was an idea that he initiated back in one of his earlier tenures. just to be clear?
Well, I think so, because at that time the cricketers have been provided with some of the senior players, and he also discussed at that time, before he initiated this with the players as well as the cricket committee, which was headed by Aravinda D. Silva, which he felt that it was a good suggestion.
Is podiatry commonly used by cricketing teams around the world?
In my previous life, it was definitely used on a regular basis. So in county cricket, you know, particularly fast bowlers, you know, they're running in, hitting the ground hard. We need them on the park on a daily basis. So we saw it as an investment. You know, people look at it and think it might be quite expensive, but we see it as an investment rather than an expense, and we hope to get a good return on it.
That you think are common to most of the players?
Yeah, one of the big things that we find, particularly with when we examine, and given that I'm a branch of medicine, I've got to look at the body across, you know, and I come from, I guess, Australia, where from a race perspective, you know, their legs are quite straight, they do have flat feet, but predominantly when we see the Sri Lankan cricketers, you've got bow legging, okay, so the tibia is something that is in below your knee, that bone there, and as a result of that being quite bowed, and also with their flat feet, a lot of stress fractures in their shins are noted. So one of the things that certainly from my end finding was that footwear became a very important part of it, okay, so the boys needed to have the right shoes. And something, I guess, in Sri Lankan culture is that, particularly the hot weather, slides or thongs are worn a lot, not shoes. And one of the big things when we're trying to control people's behaviour of feet is that you've got to wear shoes. So one of the big things to helping with rehabilitation, but also into training techniques, is trying to get a lot of the players to wear shoes. That's a starting point. That's number one. Number two with orthotics though is that helps a lot of the players who do have the flat feet, which a big percentage of the players do. And we're seeing a lot of stress and bone stress in the lower limb that can be and should be largely preventable. So that means that they can push their bodies harder and take that to the next level. So the orthotics are not just about trying to solve problems, they're also trying to assist with making the players better with what they've got. That's the percentage from the screenings that we're seeing, is that the players are a lot more flat-footed, yes.
So what is the disadvantage? I mean, does it impede the running, or what does it really do?
Yeah.
Have too much pressure on your joints?
Yeah, certainly from, I guess we can take that, there's a number of questions in that, but certainly from a running perspective, it means that the longer they run, the more bone stress builds up. So we want to be able to improve muscle activity, which helps to absorb a lot of that energy and stress. So having orthotics to improve the balance of their feet, with the flat feet that is that it helps more muscle activity in the legs and less bone activity, okay? So that's one thing. When it comes to the actual performance itself, I think the bowlers are going to be better off in terms of the faster bowlers, because they're pounding the pavement and pounding the ground as they run in. But when it comes to the batsmen, I think the longer the duration of their running between the wickets, it becomes important. So I think the focus particularly won't just be on the shorter form of the game, but actually in 50-50 and also test match cricket. Because when you're on your feet for potentially 2-3 days total, that has a big role. Okay.
Simon, you mentioned when it came to their feet or the flatness of their feet.
Yeah, we have a slightly different challenge in England because we spend 7 months of the year indoors. So you're slamming down on concrete. Causes other issues for our fast bowlers in England. So that's how it came about. We had a lot of stress fractures, and with further investigation for particular bowlers, the investment into orthotics and even handmade boots for some individuals, so that we can be really specific for that individual.
Cost us, but it's an investment on players. It's not the cost factor. Actually, we don't look at the cost factor when we invest on players.
So without getting the numbers, so apart from however much you'll be paying Mr. Sprenger over here, what are the other investments that need to be made for this process?
Well, if it's going to be an ongoing process, that's what we intend to do. athletes getting once a year down. So in order to check the players, there would be not only the current players, there would be new players who will be coming into the system, so that we are trying to make it an ongoing process where the facilities could be provided to the players, and once it's been provided, they could even directly get in touch with him and get what they want.
And will there be any other costs, like additional costs of machinery and?
Not really. Actually,
the making of the casts.
His consultation with the player, he spends almost about 20 to 25 to 30 minutes actually with the player, advising them what they should be doing and what they need to do even for the future. So first he consults, then he takes the measurements, he feels whether it's necessary. There were 1 or 2 players who didn't require it. When he tested out, he himself said, look here, this player doesn't require it, so therefore we didn't go ahead with it. But there are most of the majority of the players, we had to provide with, them with this facility. Nick මේ ආවේ දෙවෙනි වතාවට පළවෙනි වතාවට ඇවිල්ලා එයා ප්ලේයර්ස් ලව ඔක්කොම එක වෙලාව එයා දවස් 5කට 6කට විතර ආවා. එයා ඇවිල්ලා හැම ප්ලේයර්ත් එක්කම පැය විනාඩි 20ක් පැය භාගයක් විතර ස්පෙන්ඩ් කරලා ඒගොල්ලන්ගේ මෙෂර්මන්ට්ස් ගත්තා. ඒක තමයි අපිට ඉන්නේ ඒක මෙෂර්මන්ට්ස් අරගෙන ආ මෝල්ඩ් එකක් හැදුවා. ඒ මෝල්ඩ් එක තමයි ඕස්ට්‍රේලියාවට ගිහිල්ලා ඒ මෝල්ඩ් එකේ හැටියට ඒකේ අර ඉන සෝල්ඩ් එක සමස්ත ඇතුළට දාන්නේ සෝල්ඩ් එක ඒගොල්ලන් ඒක හදන්න ඕනේ. ඒක හදන්න යාට මාස එකමාරක් විතර ගියා. මොකද එයාට සෑහෙන ඒ රටේ වැඩ තියෙනවා. ඉතින් එයා දැන් මේ කාලේ එයා දවස් 3-4කට ඇවිල්ලා මේ කාර්යයට ප්ලේයර්ස්ලාගේ කකුලට දාලා බලන්න මේක හරියට ඒ විදියට ඒගොල්ලන්ට අවශ්‍ය විදියට ඒක වැඩ කරනවද නැද්ද කියලා. ඒක වැඩ කරන්නේ නැත්නම් එයා ඉස්සරහට ගෙනියලා ඒක හදලා අපිට එවන්න තමයි යාගේ බලාපොරොත්තු තියෙන්නේ. පළවෙනි වතාවට ආව එයා මෙෂර්මන්ට්ස් අරන් ගියා. දෙවෙනි වතාවට ඇවිල්ලා ඉන්නේ ඒ මෙෂර්මන්ට්ස් හැටියට හදපු එක ඒගොල්ලන්ගේ කකුල් වලට දාන හරියට පිට වෙනවද කියලා බලන්න.
යාපෘතිය සඳහා කොච්චර මුදලක් වැය වෙනවද?
මුදල් ගැන මම කිව්වා අපි දරන්නේ මුදල් දරන්නේ අපේ ආයතනයේ. මොකද අපි ඒක බලන්නේ ඉන්වෙස්ට්මන්ට් එකක් හැටියට. අපේ ටෙක්නොලොජි වලට අපි තියනවා හැම අවුරුද්ද බජට් එකේ මේකක් මේවා කරලා මේ බෙන් කරලා ඒ බජට් එකෙන් තමයි අපි මේකට වියදම් කරන ගන්න. ඒක අපි ක්‍රිකටර්ස්ලා මාර්කෙන් තමයි මේ ක්‍රිකටර්ස්ලාට වෙන් කරලා තියෙන මුදලෙන් තමයි අපි ඒගොල්ලන්ට මේවා කරන්නේ.
ඔතමාර සංඛ්‍යාත්මකව ගානක් කියන්න පුළුවන්ද මෙච්චර මුදලක් අපි
සාමාන්‍යයෙන් අපි මුදල් ගැන කතා කරන්නේ නැහැ. අපි කතා කරන්නේ අපි කරන වැඩ ගැන විතරයි. මුදල් ගැන අපිට එකට එකක් කියන්න අමාරුයි.
ඒතර පැහැදිලි ගන්න පුළුවන්ද ඇයි මේ ශ්‍රී ලංකා කණ්ඩායමට පොඩියට්‍රික් වගේ කියන්නේ මේ වගේ එකට තියෙන අවශ්‍යතාව මොකද්ද මේ අවස්ථාවේ? ක්‍රීඩකයන් ආබාධයට ලක් වෙන නිසාද නැත්නම් වෙනත්?
මම හිතන්නේ ඒක මේ නිකුත් එක මේ ඔයගලන්ට එක්ස්ප්ලেইন කරා. ඒක ඇත්තෙන්ම කියතොත් ක්‍රිකට් ක්‍රීඩාවේ හැම එක්කෙනාටම වගේ අවශ්‍ය වෙන දෙයක්. දැන් හැම රටකම වගේ මේ රටේ පමණක් නෙමෙයි හැම රටකම වගේ මේවා යූස් කරනවා. මේවත් එක තමයි රටවල් දිගින් දිගටම යන්නේ. ඒ කියන්නේ අපි වෙලාවත් එක්ක අපිත් මම හිතන්නේ මූව් වෙන්න ඕනේ. ඉතින් මේවා මේකෙන් වෙන්නේ මේගොල්ලන්ගේ තියෙන අර කිව්වා වගේ මේගොල්ලන්ගේ ඇඟේ තියෙන ඔය මේ බෝන්ස් මේවා වෙනවා. එතකොට මේගොල්ලන්ගේ හැම්ස්ට්‍රින්ග් ඉන්ජරිස් එනවා. කකුල හරියට තිබෙන්නේ නැතිකොට පොළවේ එක එක මේගොල්ලන්ට ඉන්ජරිස් එන්න පුළුවන්. දැන් අපි බැලුවොත් ප්ලේයර්ස්ලාට එනවා ස්ට්‍රෙස් ෆ්‍රැක්චර්ස් කියලා. ස්ට්‍රෙස් ෆ්‍රැක්චර්. දැන් අපේ ප්ලේයර්ස්ලා සමහර පිට බැලුවම මේගොල්ලන්ගේ තියෙනවා හැම්ස්ට්‍රින්ග් ඉන්ජරිස්. ඔය ඔක්කොම එන්නේ කකුලේ තියෙන ආබාධය උඩ තමයි. ඒ ආබාධය හදන්න තමයි මේගොල්ලන් හදන්නේ. එතකොට ඒකේ ඒ ආබාධය හැදුවා පස්සේ ඒ පංගුවක කකුල් වල ඒරියාස් වලට මේක එෆෙක්ට් වෙන්නේ නැහැ. ඒ දාන වේට් එක බෑග් දාන වේට් එක එෆෙක්ට් වෙන්නේ නැහැ. එතකොට උගතුරට ඔය ඉන්ජරිස් තියෙන එක අඩු කරගන්න පුළුවන් ප්ලේයර්ස්ලාගේ. දැන් තව දවස් 4කට ඇවිල්ලා ඉන්නවා. දැන් එයා හිට ගාල්ල යනවා. මොකද ටීම් එක ගාල්ලනේ ඉන්නේ. ඉතින් ටීම් එකත් එක්ක දවස් 2ක් වැඩ කරලා එයා කොළඹට ඇවිල්ලා අනිත් කට්ටිය එක්ක වැඩ කරලා දවස් 3කට විතර ඇවිල්ලා ඉන්නේ. The leaving on Friday, right?
Yes, leaving on Friday.
Yeah, Friday.
Go and start running. It's a process where the body adapts. That process can take, as I said, about a month. Now, in the event that we need to make any alterations, changes or anything like that, with regards to Nirmalan and the staff that are here, they are capable of doing some things for me under my advice from Australia if needed. as far as global, packaging and everything like that, if there's any problems or anything like that, I can be reached in Australia. So, same with Skype and other forms of digital media, I can be consulted. So in terms of actually physically coming back, that's something that we will probably look at over the next 12 months, potentially. But at this point in time, the first phase was the screening. This is now the fitting phase. The third phase will be following up on how the players are handling things, some of those changes, and also to some of the injury reports and other things there that we can look to change or add further to. But we've got to start that. We don't just go and go, here we go, let's fix it and let's see how it is. This is a process. We've got to build that relationship, learn about all the players' bodies and see how that translates over the next 12 to 18 months.
Yeah, and just to clarify, so these are so how exactly is it going to work? Are these going to be like custom-made shoes or insoles? How does it?
So basically, what Nick's done is he's created orthotics for a majority of the players. So basically, he's made orthotics that they can use in their gym shoes or their running shoes, and then he's made a separate set for those that need them for their cricket shoes. So the idea is that by changing the mechanics of the feet, you give the player the best, chance to perform well, but also improve fatigue levels, in the muscles, and then as Nick said, reduce bone stress through the area as well. So it's not just about helping them on the cricket field, but also in their training as well. And then providing them, as he said, I think the big thing is the footwear that they use day to day when they're training, when they're walking around, giving them the right advice on what is better for their particular foot. Just because a shoe is good for one person doesn't mean it's the ideal shoe for another person.
And what's the material that's used to make the orthotics?
It's EVA, so in a sense, if you have a running shoe and the sole material part of it, that's really what it is. It's not plastic. We used to make orthotics plastic back in the day, a long time ago, but that was too hard. It was like running on hard ground. So the new inserts are more of a softer base concept, and that absorbs stress, but also too can support body weight. So it's made of a material that can do both of those qualities.
So it's like silicone.
A little bit firmer than silicone, but in a sense, it's something, if you actually see a running shoe and actually look at the sole of it, that's particularly on an Asics, the white colour around the midsole, it looks very similar to that. So it has the ability to absorb pressure, to control the body, but also soften the blow as well. A very, very adaptable material, EVA. Yes.
Just a question for Simon. So with the work you've done with the Sri Lankan team, and it's clear this is something that is important in getting their fitness levels up. What are the other aspects that you've identified in reducing injuries, essentially?
Yeah, I think to be fair, by bringing the Marlon on board, that was our first stage of really starting to get to grips with this area. 12 months ago when I arrived, we had 9 fast bowlers out injured. We've only got Damika Prasad now from a bowling point of view, and only 2 other players with hamstring injuries. So realistically, to only have 3 players in the whole of the country with kind of 4 weeks plus injuries, as things have really moved on. I think we've looked at the way we've prepared. We've looked at bowler workloads. The players have improved fitness-wise when we've had good time to be able to do work with players in this country. There is no doubt players have improved from a fitness point of view, and that's been encouraging. The challenges we have are from a cricket calendar point of view. The guys have got a lot of cricket coming up over the next 12 to 18 months, and that's going to be a big challenge for us. But I think we're learning every day, and more about the individual, and hopefully we can plan accordingly in the future, and keep adding these little kind of 1%ers, as I call them, looking at ways that we can maximise the potential of our players.
Nick, I just want to check, there's so much of attention on the fitness levels of Sri Lankan team. So what's the correlation between their foot health and the level of fitness, and how do you sort of explain that?
In terms of the correlation, it's probably not I don't believe it's a correlation, to be honest. When you're born with a certain set of feet, and certainly we're talking more of a structural area here. Okay, so in terms of fitness, that's a pretty long correlation to draw, and unfortunately at this time I would probably be more saying that the investment in podiatry is more about understanding the human individual that we have with the player, understanding their structure, improving their mechanics, and if that does lead to being less injured and being fitter as a result of that, then that's how we will assign that. But at this point in time, it's a question that probably over the next 12 to 18 months we can revisit that again and have a look.
Well, that seems to be a little bit of a, considering the investment, we don't know the amount, but if you had to put a number or a percentage, like what percent, anyone who can answer, what percent of the injuries that we've had would you put down to poor footwear?
I think the first thing is you can't put a number or a percent to that. It's impossible to know exactly how much you can correlate an injury to foot mechanics. What I would say is that if you move a certain way, it gives you a higher risk. If we can minimize that risk, we give our players the best chance to perform well, and that means also putting performances together consistently, which happens if they're not injured. You know, if you're injured, then you can't put those performances together. You miss a certain amount of training because of it. You almost have to start again to build yourself back up to that same level. So I think with what we're trying to do here, it's more about risk management rather than saying that we're going to necessarily 100% prevent this type of injury happening. We look at it as a factor we can control rather than an uncontrollable. Yeah, your uncontrollables are things that you can't necessarily have an effect on. This is something we can have an effect on, and so the board has made a really good decision to invest in something that we can change and hopefully reduce, as one of the things that it can do is reduce the risk of injury. To Nick for being here, for coming obviously twice. The first time he came, you know, assessing all the players, giving them the right advice. A lot of them have gone out and then purchased or asked their relevant sponsors for the right footwear to make the changes necessary. And then he's come back this time. We've already started, today he started fitting some of the national squad players with their new orthotics, the ones that needed them. So he's done a great job. It's a really great thing to have his level of expertise here. He's a highly qualified podiatrist, and to have his expertise in this area is going to help us improve the high performance culture, I think, in Sri Lankan cricket, which is the big thing that we're all trying to do here. The high performance culture is addressing all those little factors that I think we may have glossed over in the past in order to improve our performance, reduce our injury risk, and give our players the best chance of putting consistent performances together. The other thing I would like to do is thank obviously the President, Ashley, and Simon for putting this whole process together. It is a big investment, and that investment will show us results not tomorrow, probably not, and it'd be really hard to put it in numbers as to what that investment is going to do for our players. But I think it's a really positive way for Sri Lanka cricket to keep thinking that if we invest well in our players, we can improve results not just in the short term but in the long term. And that is, I think, the key for us going forward, is to look long term rather than look for quick fixes. So I really appreciate the board's, I guess, support in this area. And last of all, I mean, I'd like to keep this pretty short, is to say thank you all for coming again. Appreciate it.